And he may, I think he's basically a good guy. You know, I mean, I really, I like the fact that he's promoting Christ. I nearly got arrested there.
At the 700 Club?
No. I went in to use the law library because I'm fighting the Kabbalist group in Virginia Beach because I was nearly battered to death. I was nearly killed. I am a totally abused, psychologically, physically broken bones wife. Now, it says that if you are this way, you just get a warrant and you get your husband to say he's sorry or something. You know, that's all I wanted, was for my Marine Corps husband to say, I'm sorry that I did this. But if he's got men behind him telling him to do this, they're not going to let him say he's sorry, are they? Mm-hmm. No. If he's got Phil Holwager, the pastor, who's also Yale-trained intelligence chaplain with Pat Robertson, who's the pastor that I took my husband to try and get him to become a Christian, if he's meeting with Phil Holwager and Phil Holwager is telling my husband what to do, that says that Phil Holwager is a programmer for my husband. He's been trained in mind control. And Phil Holwager admitted to me, I've had psychological training, yes. And it slipped out. Oh, well, I made the mistake and told George, you know, in other words, he let me know that he has power over my husband. So then there's Ty Kroll, who's in the same church with my husband, who is a sailor, and he did some sexual things to his son, and he had his children taken away. Well, he's in the church and a good guy and everything, but he's a pedophile. Now, my husband, and I'm sort of taking up Ty Kroll's side, because we're in the same Bible study. It's kind of interesting. But Ty Kroll and my husband are meeting kind of secretly with Phil Holwager. And then there's T. Parker Host, who's running around nude at his farm, enticing my husband out, you know, and they go away for sort of boat trips for 2 hours. Now, I'm saying, as a woman and a wife, what's going on here? All of a sudden we go up to Matthews County, where Holwager also has a house. Host has a house. But it's also where my grandfather, Miller, was born. So I feel very comfortable in Matthews County. These people were not born in Virginia. Do you know what I mean? And yet they're bringing, all of a sudden, spur of the moment, taking my husband up and then taking my husband away on a 2-hour boat ride. Or we get to Phil Holwager's son's house, and then all of a sudden my husband's riding home with Phil Holwager in the car. It's all been planned. So I'm saying, and this is just before, just after my husband got back from Norway, and I'm trying to remember whether the King and Queen of Norway had come either just before or just after this. It had something to do with the King and Queen of Norway's visit. They wanted to keep me away from the King and Queen of Norway because I believe they're Christians. I believe they're honorable people. And I was able to prevail against this group by going to the Norwegian ambassador, who's a wonderful man, and I was thinking about the good Norwegian people who wanted to see the King and Queen of Norway when he came to NATO. And all I did was what any honorable citizen would do, representing the honest little people who were Norwegians in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. I wanted them to have a chance to meet their King and Queen. And the State Department didn't want me to do it. NATO didn't want me to do it. The Kabbalists didn't want me to do it. And neither did my husband. But what happened was I was with a solid, wonderful person, Ambassador Kjell Vibe. And we went to the Norwegian embassy. This was, I know I'm digressing and this is hard to follow, but Kjell Vibe and I were sitting at the table with my husband and an intelligence operative named Bill Nelson. who tried to sabotage the Norwegian group that I was running in Virginia Beach. And Kjell Vibe, we were planning a trip to Norway. And I knew things were going on with my husband and the weapons sales and, you know, all of this stuff. Because he was dealing with the embassy, the American embassy, and with people, and, you know, there were things going on. And I knew things were going on. I was sensing it really strongly. So we were in Washington sitting around the big table in the Norwegian embassy with the ambassador sitting to my right, Bill and Kate Nelson to my left, my husband across the way, and Suzanne Baptist, who is the daughter of the man who started the Sister City Association. And we were supposedly planning this trip for the mayor of Virginia Beach and her husband to Norway. And he let it slip, the ambassador let it slip, that the King and Queen of Norway were coming to Norfolk in October. Mm-hmm. And the ironic thing is, it was the very day the Nobel Peace Prize was being awarded in Norway. I didn't know it at the time, but I thought, this is really strange later on. Here's the King and Queen of Norway are at NATO headquarters the very day that they're giving out the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, which is where the King and Queen of Norway are. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned this to Mayor Oberndorf, whose husband is involved in this weapons sales stuff, because her husband, Roger Oberndorf, and my husband went to this deserted airfield. Roger Oberndorf is involved with Andrew Fine, who's Army intelligence, who tried to take over the Norwegian organization from me when I knew that the Andrew Fine does all this group swinging sex with his wife and with NATO couples. And, you know, and I'm going, something's going on here. Roger Oberndorf and my husband went to this airfield. I wasn't allowed. Mm-hmm. So I knew, because my husband was meeting with other people, like, in other words, this is big. Absolutely. Let me give you an example. Because I was involved, I love people from other cultures. I went to an Episcopal religious girls' school, mm-hmm. and all of my, they had girls from all over the world there. They had a Turkish, my chemistry teacher was from Turkey. Her name was Mrs. Kunt. I had a Daddy Didion was an Armenian. Turned out he was later a spy, or they told him, he was a spy, but he was from Armenia. I had a French teacher who was in the French Resistance. St. Margaret's School is a school for double agents, but it's a great school for girls, because you're with all these people from other cultures. You know, we had the president of the school's father was with Aramco. I didn't know about all this stuff and how they kind of do it. Woodbury Forest is another school like that. I sent my son there. He went 4 years to Woodbury Forest, which is where President Bush's son went, Oliver North's son went. It's in Orange, Virginia. I didn't know how it all worked. And I mean, if it works for peace and Christianity and love of Muslims, love of people, give them the right to their own cultures, the way the British did, you know, because I believe basically wherever the British went, I know there's a big hate Britain movement going on, but wherever the Brits tended to go, whether it was India or Africa, they allowed the cultures. They still wore saris, and they still were, you know, the ragheads were ragheads to protect their heads from the sun. Now they're called ragheads, and they're targeted as enemies by our little boys. Our little boys are taught to hate ragheads and to kill raghead women. Well, I don't think that's very Christian. So I'm looking at the top guys, and they're not Christians. So it begs the question, well, what are they? Well, that question is in my mind after I was married 3 years, and I started delving. My own little Miss Marple, my own little, you know. And I've arrived at the definite conclusion that they're not only not Christians, but when you have group sex and homosexual sex and orgies and things of this nature by the top people who are running my city, at least, certainly Virginia Beach, I started looking at other military towns and started at Key West. Everybody knows about Key West. Boston, that's the major homosexual capital of the world. You know, they're having sex on the highways. Guys are parking. People can't even go into the restrooms in Boston. Of course, Washington, D.C. Yeah, well, but at least, now I don't know about, see, I know that he is sick and he's addictive, but I believe that, now that you all will all disagree with me, but I lived with Sarah McClendon, and Sarah is a senior White House correspondent, and I believe he was just addicted to sex, and I believe that he was put into that office to try and control him, but I believe that he has repented. I believe he had strong grandparents who loved him, who were Baptists. I have hope for that man. Now, I know a lot of people don't, but I do, and I have hope for that marriage. I know she's a strong woman, and I know a lot of men don't like a strong woman, and I believe she loves him. And I believe that basically he loves her, and I believe they love their daughter. And I will say one thing, that at least, you know, and who knows what their motives are. It's between them and God, but I'm glad it came out for their marriage. And they don't like that, you see. That's why the little guy who's, you know, the little short guy, what's his name, the homosexual, Stephanopoulos, or George Stephanopoulos. Well, I met him. See, I went into the White House with Sarah, and I met him. He's a little short guy, and I even saw the place, the Mambo Jumbo room, where he hangs out, right around the corner from the Ontario. Well, homosexuals are one thing. It's an abomination in God's eyes. It is an abomination. It's a weakness. It shows that they're very immature, and, you know, we all go through stages in life where we're immature. And I wish he would grow up. There's a whitehead who's an ambassador who's a homosexual. And his lover is one of Bill Clinton's attorneys from North Carolina. Now, I like the way that man thinks. He's a homosexual, but I like the way he thinks. James Angleton, CIA, was a homosexual. The head of the FBI was a homosexual. Paisley was a homosexual. They murdered him. All the British intelligence agents were homosexuals. I haven't yet arrived at my theory on that, except that it is a weakness. It is a moral weakness. It's a way to control people.